2000, the Black Knight Satellite. The story of the Black Knight Satellite is a space mystery that asks a simple question. Is there an ancient, alien object orbiting Earth right now and watching us? To understand the Black Knight, we must look at it as a collection of echoes, strange radio signals, misinterpreted data, and a series of photographs that seem to show a dark, angular sentinel watching over our planet from a polar orbit. It represents a bridge between the analog mysteries of the past and the digital scrutiny of the modern era, forcing us to wonder if we've ever truly been alone in our own sky. The story officially entered the new millennium in the year 2000, fueled by images captured just 2 years prior during the STS-88 mission. These photographs, released by NASA, showed an irregularly shaped, obsidian-colored object silhouetted against the blue horizon of Earth. While the official record catalogues this object as item STS-088-724-66, a simple thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk, the public saw something far more ancient. To those who believe, this was the definitive look at a 13,000-year-old alien probe. The legend of the Black Knight did not begin with the camera, however. It began with the radio. In 1899, the inventor Nikola Tesla was working in his laboratory in Colorado Springs, experimenting with high-voltage electricity and wireless transmission. In the quiet of the night, his sensitive equipment picked up a series of rhythmic electrical signals. They were repetitive and numerical, qualities that Tesla believed could only be produced by an intelligent mind. At the time, he speculated that these greetings were coming from Mars. Today, theorists believe he was the first human to intercept a transmission from the Black Knight as it passed overhead. By the late 1920s, the mystery deepened. A Norwegian civil engineer named Jørgen Hals was experimenting with shortwave radio signals when he noticed something inexplicable. After he sent a transmission, he would hear an echo return to him several seconds later. These were eventually termed long-delayed echoes, or LDEs. In a time before man-made satellites, there was no logical reason for a radio wave to bounce back from the void of space with such a specific delay. It was as if something was caught in our orbit, listening to our early attempts at communication and repeating them back to us. The theory remained a quiet whisper until 1973, when a Scottish science writer named Duncan Lunan analyzed these Norwegian echoes. By plotting the delay times as data points on a graph, Lunan discovered what appeared to be a star map. He suggested that the signals were actually a message from a probe sent by a civilization from the star system Epsilon Bootes. Based on the position of the stars in the map, Lunan calculated that the probe had arrived in Earth's orbit approximately 13,000 years ago. Though Lunan later retracted his findings, citing scientific errors, the 13,000-year-old figure became a permanent pillar of the Black Knight lore. As we moved through the mid-20th century, the reports became more official. In 1954, 3 years before the launch of Sputnik, newspapers reported that the United States Air Force had detected 2 mystery satellites orbiting the Earth. At a time when no country possessed the technology to launch an object into space, the existence of these dark satellites was terrifying. Some believed they were Soviet technology. Others believed they were something much older. By 1960, Time magazine reported that the US Navy had detected a dark object in a polar orbit. Polar orbits are particularly difficult to achieve and are ideal for total surface surveillance, making the object appear like a sophisticated reconnaissance tool. While NASA engineers have spent decades explaining these sightings as a jumble of space debris, lost thermal covers, and misidentified spy satellites like the Discoverer 8, the Black Knight remains a powerful symbol. It represents the idea that we are being watched by a silent, ancient observer, a sentinel placed here at the dawn of human civilization to monitor our progress. It is a story of how humanity tries to find patterns in the noise of the universe. We listen to the static of the stars and we see shapes in the shadows of the vacuum, hoping to find proof that we are not alone. The Black Knight is the ultimate phantom of the 20th century, a dark mystery that refused to be debunked even as we entered a new era of high-definition space travel. It set the stage for how we would interpret anomalies in the years to come. As the calendar turned and the year 2000 ushered in a new millennium, our collective anxiety began to shift. We stopped looking only at the sky for ancient observers and started looking at the very media we use to communicate. If an alien probe could hide in our orbit for millennia, what else might be hidden in plain sight, tucked away in the films and television shows we watch every day? (2001) Predictive Programming. The idea of predictive programming suggests that movies and TV shows aren't just entertainment, they're actually warning us about big world events before they happen. This theory posits that the media we consume acts as a psychological tool used to prime the public for the future. By showing us glimpses of disasters or social changes in a fictional context first, the powers that be can lessen our resistance and shock when those events eventually manifest in the real world, turning pop culture into a roadmap for global control. The year 2001 serves as the ultimate case study for this phenomenon. Long before the tragic events of September 11th, theorists argue that the script was already being read to the public through movies, television shows, and even music. One of the most frequently cited examples is the pilot episode of the television series The Lone Gunman, a spin-off of The X-Files, which aired in March 2001, exactly 6 months before the actual events took place. In this episode, a shadow government faction attempts to remote pilot a commercial airliner into the World Trade Center to spark a profitable war. To the viewer in early 2001, it was a far-fetched plot of political intrigue. To the theorist in late 2001, it was a blueprint hidden in plain sight. The depth of these coincidences in 2001 extends far beyond a single TV show. Proponents of the theory point to a dizzying array of media from that year. In the film The Patriot, released shortly before, there are subtle visual cues that theorists link to future events. Even in the world of animation, The Simpsons, a show that has become the modern poster child for predictive programming, featured an episode where a character holds up a brochure for New York City where the price 9 is placed next to the silhouettes of the Twin Towers, creating a visual 9/11. The argument is not necessarily that the creators are in on the plan, but that they are channeled or contracted to weave these symbols into the collective subconscious. But why would a secretive group want to broadcast their plans beforehand? This is where the theory takes a psychological turn. In the study of behavioral science, there is a concept called classical conditioning. Predictive programming operates on a similar level. If the public sees a terrifying event depicted in a movie first, it is filed away in the brain as fiction. When the event actually occurs, the brain experiences a sense of familiarity rather than pure, unadulterated shock. This familiarity leads to a state of passivity, making the population more likely to accept new laws, wars, or restrictions that they might have otherwise fought against. It is the art of manufacturing consent through the screen. The year 2001 was also a pivotal moment for the science fiction genre, which theorists say was used to prime us for the rise of the surveillance state. Following the turn of the millennium, we saw a surge in films depicting biometric scanning, facial recognition, and the loss of privacy. By making these technologies look cool or inevitable in the cinema, the public was being prepared for the legislative changes that would arrive just a year later. The transition from a free society to a monitored one was made smoother because we had already lived it in the movie theater. As we look back at the media of 2001, we see a world that was being told what was coming. Whether it was the imagery of falling towers or the themes of global panic, the content of that year felt like a rehearsal. This theory suggests that nothing in the mainstream media is accidental. Every logo, every plot line, and every background detail is a thread in a larger tapestry. We are told to pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, but predictive programming encourages us to look closely at the curtain itself, for it is there that the future is often written in code. By the end of 2001, the world had changed forever, and the public was left trying to make sense of a reality that felt strangely like a movie. But as we began to question the images on our screens, some started to look even further back into history, questioning the very foundations of the stories we have been told for a century. If our current reality can be manipulated through media, could our past have been manipulated through industry and insurance? If we cannot trust the events of today, how can we trust the records of yesterday? (2003) The Titanic Olympic Swap. The Titanic swap theory claims that the famous ship didn't actually sink. Instead, a different, broken ship was switched in its place for a massive insurance payout. While the world remembers the Titanic as a tragic, unsinkable icon, this theory suggests that the vessel at the bottom of the North Atlantic is actually its nearly identical sister ship, the Olympic. In this version of history, the sinking was not a freak accident of nature, but a calculated act of corporate fraud that went horribly wrong, hidden beneath the waves for over a century. To understand the swap, one must look at the financial state of the White Star Line in 1911. The Olympic was the first of the great Olympic-class liners, but its career began with a series of expensive disasters. Only months after its launch, the Olympic collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. The collision was severe. The Olympic's hull was smashed, its keel was twisted, and the central propeller shaft was damaged. Under the maritime laws of the time, the Olympic was found to be at fault for the accident, meaning the White Star Line's insurance would not cover the astronomical cost of repairs. The company, owned by the powerful financier J.P. Morgan, was suddenly facing a financial catastrophe that threatened to sink the entire enterprise before the Titanic could even set sail. Theorists argue that a daring plan was hatched in the dry docks of Belfast. Since the Olympic and the Titanic were being worked on side by side and were virtually identical in design, it would be a simple, though massive, undertaking to swap their identities. By switching the nameplates, lifeboats, and interior branding, the damaged Olympic could be sent out to sea disguised as the brand new Titanic. The goal was simple: provide a sinkable ship that could be conveniently involved in an accident, allowing the company to collect the full insurance payout for a new vessel, while the actual, pristine Titanic would continue to serve the fleet under the name Olympic for decades to come. In 2003, this theory saw a massive resurgence as historians and enthusiasts began analyzing high-resolution photographs of the wreck. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence cited by supporters is the number of portholes on the ship's sea decks. Original photographs of the Titanic during construction show it had 14 portholes, yet when it departed on its maiden voyage, it mysteriously had 16, the exact number that the Olympic possessed. Furthermore, divers and robotic submersibles have captured footage of the wreck's hull that some claim shows the letters M and P etched into the metal beneath the paint where the Titanic nameplate was attached, letters that would correspond to the name Olympic. The circumstances of the voyage itself in 1912 also come under intense scrutiny within this framework. Conspiracy theorists point to the mystery ship seen on the horizon the night of the sinking, the SS Californian. This ship had no passengers, was carrying only warm blankets and sweaters, and had stopped in the middle of an ice field, seemingly waiting for something. The theory suggests the Californian was the designated rescue vessel, positioned to take on the passengers after a controlled sinking. However, due to a fatal miscalculation in navigation or timing, the Titanic struck the iceberg far from its rescue partner, turning a planned insurance scam into a historic tragedy. The behavior of J.P. Morgan also fuels the fire of this 21st century debate. Morgan, who was scheduled to be on the Titanic's maiden voyage, cancelled his trip at the very last minute, citing a sudden illness. He was later spotted in France, seemingly in perfect health, only days after the ship went down. He was not alone. Several of his high-ranking business associates and social peers also cancelled their tickets just before the departure. To many, This looked less like a coincidence and more like the actions of men who knew the ship was never intended to reach New York. Despite the compelling nature of these claims, maritime historians and the builders at Harland and Wolff have long dismissed the swap as an impossibility. They point to the thousands of unique parts, from engines to furniture, that were stamped with the specific hull numbers, 400 for Olympic and 401 for Titanic. They argue that a swap of this magnitude would have required the silence of thousands of shipyard workers and crew members, a secret far too large to keep for a century. They maintain that the differences between the two ships, while subtle to the untrained eye, were structural and could not have been faked in a matter of weeks. However, the allure of the Titanic-Olympic swap remains a staple of modern conspiracy culture because it taps into our deep-seated distrust of corporate power and industrial-era greed. It transforms a senseless tragedy into a narrative of human calculation. In the quiet darkness of the deep ocean, the wreck continues to deteriorate, its secrets slowly being claimed by the salt and the pressure. Whether it is the Titanic or the Olympic resting on the seabed, the story serves as a reminder that history is often written by the survivors, while the truth remains submerged, waiting for the next generation of technology to shine a light into the abyss. – 2004. The Disney Frozen Theory. The Disney Frozen Theory is a modern legend about Walt Disney's body and the power of search engine manipulation. For years, rumors claimed that the visionary creator had been cryogenically preserved and hidden beneath a ride at Disneyland, waiting for future science to revive him. This theory suggests the 2013 film Frozen was titled specifically to bury these rumors, ensuring that anyone searching for Disney Frozen would find a hit movie instead of a dark urban legend about a Frozen founder. While the Disney family has officially stated that Walt was cremated in 1966, the Frozen rumors refused to melt away. By 2004, as the internet became the primary source for all human knowledge, the Disney Corporation faced a unique branding problem. Whenever a curious person typed the words Disney and Frozen into the emerging search engines of the time, they weren't met with advertisements for theme parks or classic movies. Instead, they were greeted by page after page of conspiracy blogs, grainy photos of cryo chambers, and speculative articles about the founder's icy afterlife. The legend was the first thing people saw, and in the world of corporate image, perception is often more important than reality. Theorists argue that the release of the 2013 film Frozen was not just a creative decision based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen, but a brilliant and calculated move in digital housekeeping. By naming one of the most successful animated films in history simply Frozen, Disney effectively buried the cryogenics conspiracy. Today, if you search for Disney Frozen, you are met with millions of results for Queen Elsa, Princess Anna, and the hit song Let It Go. The algorithm has been successfully retrained. The old rumors of Walt's preservation have been pushed to the second or third page of search results, a place where, in the digital age, information goes to die. The depth of this theory lies in its timing and the specific branding choices made during the mid-2000s and early 2010s. 4 decades, the project that eventually became Frozen had been in development under the title The Snow Queen. It was a title that aligned with Disney's history of adapting fairy tales, such as The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. However, the sudden shift to a single, evocative adjective, Frozen, struck many as a strategic choice. It was a word that perfectly overlapped with the most damaging keyword associated with the company's founder. By claiming the word Frozen for a multi-billion-dollar franchise, the company created a wall of content that the old urban legend could never climb over. In the world of corporate public relations, this is known as SEO burial. It is a practice used by many high-profile entities to ensure that positive or neutral information outweighs negative or controversial history in search results. Proponents of the theory argue that Disney, being a pioneer in both storytelling and technology, understood the long-term value of the digital landscape. They realized that they didn't need to disprove the cryogenics rumor, They simply needed to make it harder to find. In the 21st century, if an idea isn't on the first page of Google, for many people, it effectively ceases to exist. This theory also touches on the broader Walt Disney mythos. Walt was a man fascinated by the future, by progress, and by the potential of technology to solve human problems. He was a frequent visitor to the House of the Future and Tomorrowland, which made the idea of him seeking immortality through cryogenics seem plausible to the public. The conspiracy thrives because it feels consistent with the character of the man himself. By replacing the Frozen of science fiction with the Frozen of musical fantasy, the company moved the brand away from the macabre and back into the realm of family-friendly magic. While Disney executives would argue that the title change was simply a marketing move to appeal to broader audiences, similar to how Rapunzel became Tangled, the theorists remain unconvinced. They see the success of the film as the perfect cover. Every time a child buys an Elsa doll or a parent streams the movie, they are unwittingly contributing to the digital fog that hides the mystery of the company's founder. It is a masterpiece of modern mythology, where a new story is used to erase the memory of an old one. The Disney Frozen theory reminds us that in the information age, history is no longer just what is written in books, it is what the algorithm decides to show us. It highlights the quiet power that corporations hold over our collective memory. We are left to wonder what other secrets might be hidden behind popular titles and trending topics. As we navigate the digital world, we must ask ourselves if we are seeing the truth, or if we are simply seeing the version of the truth that has been most effectively optimized for our consumption. (2005) The Clinton Body Count. The phenomenon known as the Clinton body count is a complex web of statistical anomalies and tragic coincidences that has fascinated political skeptics since the early days of the 1990s. While it reached a fever pitch in the mid-2000s, it represents a deeper cultural anxiety about the nature of power and the cost of proximity to the highest levels of government. The theory posits that a suspiciously high number of associates, bodyguards, and colleagues of Bill and Hillary Clinton have met untimely ends under mysterious circumstances. For those who track these events, the list is not merely a series of unfortunate accidents, but a trail of breadcrumbs leading toward a dark side of American political history. The narrative gained significant traction in 2005 as the digital archive of the Clinton era began to be codified and shared across the early internet. At the heart of this archive is the idea that knowing too much is a dangerous liability when dealing with the political elite. The list of names is long and varied, ranging from high-profile advisors to obscure legal clerks. Perhaps the most famous entry is that of Vince Foster, a White House deputy counsel and longtime friend of the Clintons, who was found dead in Fort Marcy Park in 1993. While official investigations ruled his death a suicide caused by depression, theorists point to inconsistencies in the forensic evidence and the suspicious handling of files in his office as proof of a much broader cover-up. As we move through the 2005 perspective of this theory, we see a pattern of accidental deaths that theorists find impossible to ignore. There are the stories of the various bodyguards and security personnel who perished in plane crashes or sudden accidents just before they were scheduled to testify in various investigations. There is the case of Ron Brown, the Secretary of Commerce, who died in a plane crash in Croatia in 1996. Proponents of the theory often highlight reports of a suspicious hole in Brown's skull that some medical examiners initially thought resembled a gunshot wound, despite the official report citing the crash as the sole cause of death. What makes the body count theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the sheer volume of coincidence it asks the observer to accept. Skeptics of the theory argue that if you are in politics for 40 years and know thousands of people, it is statistically inevitable that many of them will die of natural causes, accidents, or even violence. They argue that the list is a product of cherry-picking, taking ordinary tragedies and weaving them into a sinister tapestry by ignoring the thousands of other associates who are perfectly fine. They suggest that the Clinton body count is a classic example of apophenia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. However, for the theorists, the connections are anything but unrelated. They point to the Arkansas connection and the early days of Bill Clinton's governorship, where several young men supposedly witnessed activities at the Mena Intermountain Municipal Airport and subsequently met grisly ends. The Boys on the Tracks case remains a cornerstone of this law, a tragedy involving two teenagers whose deaths were initially ruled accidental but were later found to be much more suspicious. Because these events occurred on the periphery of the Clintons' rise to power, they have been permanently folded into the legend of the body count. The year 2005 was a pivotal time for this theory because it marked a transition. It was no longer just a series of whispered rumors in fringe newsletters. It had become a permanent fixture of the digital landscape. The rise of blogs and early social forums allowed users to create vast spreadsheets, cross-referencing dates of testimony with dates of death. This era of citizen journalism gave the theory a sense of academic weight. People weren't just shouting into the void, they were building databases. They were looking at the deaths of people like Mary Mahoney, a former White House intern, or Jim McDougal, a key figure in the Whitewater scandal, and asking why so many threads seemed to be cut short just as they were being pulled. Ultimately, the Clinton body count theory functions as a modern mythology about the untouchables. It reflects a belief that the laws governing the average citizen do not apply to those at the top of the pyramid. Whether the deaths are truly connected or are simply the result of a long career in a high-stress, high-stakes environment, the theory persists because it taps into a fundamental distrust of authority. It suggests that the halls of power are lined with shadows, and that the price of entry into that world might be higher than anyone is willing to admit. In the quiet, steady rhythm of political history, these names remain as footnotes, reminders of lives cut short and questions left unanswered. As we look at the list, we are forced to grapple with the boundary between cynical reality and the chilling possibility that some secrets are worth more than a human life. The archive continues to grow, each decade adding new names and new questions to a ledger that never seems to close. 2007. The Mystery of the Hollow Moon. The mystery of the hollow moon is a theory that has captivated researchers since the early 2000s, suggesting that our closest celestial neighbor may not be a natural satellite, but a prehistoric, artificial megastructure. This concept serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened during the early 21st century as digital telescope technology allowed amateur astronomers to capture glitches in the lunar surface. To understand the hollow moon, one must look past the gray craters and consider the strange physics that have puzzled NASA scientists for decades. It is a story that challenges the very origin of our world, proposing that the moon was not a byproduct of a planetary collision, but a deliberate placement, a metallic sentinel parked in our orbit for reasons we are only beginning to guess. The turning point for this theory in the modern era occurred around 2007, when viral footage of the lunar wave began to circulate online. Observers using high-powered digital cameras claimed to see a strange, horizontal ripple move across the surface of the moon, much like a refresh line on an old television screen or a glitch in a digital projection. This led a new generation of theorists to believe that what we see in the night sky is actually a sophisticated hologram projected over a metallic, hollow sphere to hide its true, mechanical nature. While mainstream science attributed these waves to atmospheric distortion or camera sensors, the 2007 digital explosion gave the spaceship moon theory a layer of modern technical intrigue it had never seen before. Theorists often point back to the Apollo 12 mission in 1969 as the scientific smoking gun. During this mission, the lunar module's ascent stage was intentionally crashed back onto the lunar surface to test seismic equipment. According to NASA's own reports at the time, the moon did not react like a solid mass of rock. Instead, it rang like a bell for over an hour. In subsequent missions, larger impacts caused the moon to vibrate for over 3 hours, reaching depths of 20 miles. To a conspiracy theorist, a solid celestial body does not ring with such resonance. Only a hollow vessel with a metallic hull could produce such a sustained, rhythmic vibration. This data, revived and debated in the mid-2000s, suggested that the Moon's crust is merely a shell covering a massive, empty interior. Further evidence cited in this deep dive involves the strange mathematical coincidences of the Moon's placement. The Moon is roughly 400 times smaller than the Sun, but it is also roughly 400 times closer to the Earth. This precise ratio allows for the phenomenon of a total solar eclipse, where the Moon perfectly covers the Sun's disk. In the vast, chaotic expanse of the universe, such a perfect fit is statistically improbable to occur by sheer chance. Furthermore, the Moon follows a near-perfect circular orbit, unlike almost every other natural satellite in the solar system, which follows an elliptical path. These geometrical impossibilities lead many to believe the Moon was engineered and steered into its current position to stabilize the Earth's tilt and tide, acting as a life support system for the planet. Additionally, the Moon's craters provide a physical anomaly that is difficult to ignore. On any other planetary body, a larger meteor creates a deeper crater. However, on the Moon, regardless of the width of the impact site, the craters remain remarkably shallow. It is as if the meteors are hitting an impenetrable inner barrier that they cannot pierce. Theorists suggest that beneath the outer layers of lunar dust and regolith lies an inner shell made of an incredibly dense, heat-resistant material, perhaps a titanium or brass alloy hull. This would explain why even the most massive celestial impacts only result in surface-level bruising rather than deep penetration into the Moon's core. As we look at the lunar surface through the lens of 2007 technology, the artificial satellite theory suggests that the Moon was towed into Earth's orbit eons ago. Some believe it serves as a monitoring station for an ancient intelligence, a silent observer that has recorded every moment of human evolution. Others speculate it is a Noah's Ark containing the biological records or the cryogenically frozen remains of a lost civilization from a destroyed planet. Whatever the truth, the image of the Moon as a cold, dead rock is replaced by something far more mysterious, a silent, hollow sentinel that has watched over humanity since the beginning of time. By the end of 2007, the Moon was no longer just a light in the sky. It was a riddle wrapped in a hologram, a reminder that the most significant secrets may be hanging right above our heads in the dead of night. – 2008. The Denver Airport Bunkers. The conspiracy of the Denver International Airport is one that has rattled travelers for years, growing into a modern legend that transcends simple urban myth. It serves as a foundation for many debates about the existence of a shadow government, specifically regarding the construction of massive underground facilities beneath the terminal. While most airports are designed for efficiency and travel, Denver International, which opened in 1995 but became a focal point of intense internet research and viral scrutiny in 2008, feels more like a cathedral for the occult than a transportation hub. From its gargoyle statues to its apocalyptic murals, every inch of the airport seems to tell a story that has nothing to do with aviation and everything to do with a dark, hidden future. By 2008, the DIA theory moved from fringe newsletters to the mainstream digital consciousness. The focus of this mystery is the staggering amount of Earth that was moved during construction. Historical records show that 110 million cubic yards of Earth were relocated, far more than was necessary for a standard airport, and nearly a third of the amount moved during the creation of the Panama Canal. Reports surfaced of a multi-leveled underground city, complete with a massive tunnel system that theorists believe lead to secret bunkers designed to house the global elite during a planetary catastrophe or a new world order transition. The sheer scale of the project, which went $2 billion over budget and was years behind schedule, suggested to the public that the airport was merely a cover for the real project, a subterranean fortress. Those who have explored the airport's layout point to the strange AUAG symbols engraved on the floor near the murals. While official explanations state these are the chemical symbols for gold and silver, theorists in 2008 linked them to a more sinister discovery: Australia antigen, a deadly strain of hepatitis that some believe was being developed as a biological weapon in the tunnels below. Furthermore, a dedication capstone in the airport features the square and compass of the Freemasons and mentions a New World Airport Commission, an organization that, curiously, does not actually exist. This capstone is said to sit directly above a time capsule intended to be opened in the year 2094, leading many to wonder what knowledge is being preserved for a post-apocalyptic world. The murals themselves are perhaps the most disturbing and content-heavy part of the lore. One famous painting, titled Children of the World Dream of Peace, depicts a massive, gas-masked soldier wielding a scimitar and a machine gun, standing over a line of weeping women and children. In his wake, a grey mist of chemical death rolls across the land. Another mural shows the forest on fire, the extinction of whales and leopards, and a group of children gathered around a dead girl in a coffin. While the Airport Commission claims these are works of art depicting the eventual triumph of peace over war, theorists in 2008 saw them as predictive programming, a visual map or spoiler for a coming global purge. The transition from death to life in the murals is seen not as a hopeful message, but as a blueprint for a world with a significantly reduced population. The presence of Blucifer, the massive, 32-foot-tall blue horse statue with glowing red eyes that stands outside the airport, only adds to the dark energy of the site. The statue's history is genuinely macabre. It fell on its creator, Luis Jimenez, severing an artery and killing him before it was even completed. To those who believe in the airport's dark purpose, the horse represents the pale horse of death from the Book of Revelation. The red eyes, which glow ominously at night, are seen as a beacon for those who understand the true nature of the Denver facility. By the time 2008 came to a close, the Denver International Airport had become the Area 51 of the Midwest. To the casual traveler passing through for a layover, it is just a strange, slightly eerie hub with bad art. But to those who look closer at the air filtration vents that seem too large for a terminal, or the buried buildings that were supposedly misbuilt and then covered with dirt, the airport represents the visible tip of a hidden iceberg. It stands as a monument to a plan that is literally buried beneath the feet of the public, a labyrinth of bunkers waiting for the day when the gates finally open and the new world begins. It is a place where the sky meets the ground, and where the secrets of the elite are hidden in plain sight, tucked away behind the luggage carousels and security checkpoints. – 2009, Lake City Quiet Pills. The mystery of Lake City Quiet Pills is one of the most chilling and complex enigmas in the history of the digital age. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the hidden layers of the internet and the possibility of a global network of contract assassins operating in plain sight. Unlike many conspiracies that involve famous politicians or aliens, this story began on a relatively obscure social news site called Reddit in 2009. It centers on a user named Religion of Peace, a person who seemed to be a grumpy, elderly veteran, but whose digital footprint may have revealed a secret portal used by professional wetwork operatives. The story began when the user Religion of Peace passed away, or at least, that was the claim made by his supposed associates. Following his death, another user began posting strange, encrypted messages on a subreddit that Religion of Peace had moderated. This led curious internet sleuths to a website called LakeCityQuietPills.com. On the surface, the site appeared to be a low-budget, broken image hosting service or a hobbyist site for people interested in ammunition, quiet pills being a slang term for bullets used in suppressed weapons. However, when researchers looked at the site's source code, they found something terrifying. Hidden within the HTML were calendars and job listings that looked less like hobbyist meetups and more like professional hits. One listing, in particular, coincided perfectly with the 2010 assassination of a high-profile target in Dubai. As the investigation deepened in late 2009 and early 2010, the lore of Lake City quiet pills grew into a massive archive of digital forensics. Sleuths discovered that the site had been active since the early 2000s and appeared to be a communication hub for a group of private military contractors. The hidden text mentioned dispatching people to various locations across the globe, using coded language to discuss logistics, payments, and disposal. The name Lake City itself refers to a real-world military ammunition plant in Missouri, adding a layer of grounded, gritty reality to the theory. It wasn't just a ghost story. It felt like a glimpse into a world where the laws of nations did not apply. What makes this theory so compelling for a long-form deep dive is the eerie atmosphere of the hidden world. It suggests that the internet we use every day, for social media, shopping, and news, is merely a thin veneer over a much darker infrastructure. The idea that a mundane, ugly website could be the command center for international assassins is a haunting thought. It forces us to wonder how many other broken websites or boring forums are actually disguising high-level criminal or government activity. For the theorists of 2009, Lake City quiet pills was the smoking gun that proved the deep web was not just for hackers, but for the most dangerous people on the planet. As the years have passed, the website has vanished and been replaced, and many of the original threads have been deleted. Some skeptics argue that the whole thing was an elaborate alternate reality game, ARG, or a prank by bored programmers. However, the sheer amount of specific, technical data and the uncanny timing of the job postings with real-world events keep the mystery alive. It remains a cornerstone of internet lore, a reminder that in the vast, unmapped territory of the digital world, some things are better left undiscovered. It is a story of shadows, codes, and the quiet pills that silence those who know too much. (2010) The Conspiracy of HAARP. The Conspiracy of HAARP is one that has rattled people for decades, but it reached a fever pitch in 2010 as a series of unexplained natural disasters struck the globe. HAARP, which stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, is a real-fledged facility located in the remote wilderness of Gakona, Alaska. Officially, it is an ionospheric heater used to study the uppermost layer of our atmosphere for the improvement of radio communications and surveillance. However, to those who track the intersection of military technology and environmental anomalies, HAARP is something far more formidable, a weapon capable of controlling the weather and triggering tectonic events from thousands of miles away. The year 2010 became a focal point for HAARP theories following the devastating earthquake in Haiti. While geologists pointed to the movement of fault lines, a vocal community of theorists suggested that the disaster was the result of a seismic weapon test. They argued that by beaming high-frequency radio waves into the ionosphere, HAARP can cause the atmosphere to bulge, creating a massive pressure differential that can be directed back down to Earth. This atmospheric heating is said to be capable of steering hurricanes, creating droughts, or, most terrifyingly, triggering earthquakes by vibrating the Earth's crust at a resonant frequency. The sheer scale of the Alaskan facility, with its forest of 180 massive antennas, provided a perfect visual for these fears. The lore of weather warfare extends back to the Cold War, but the 2010 era brought new evidence in the form of satellite imagery and chemtrail observations. Theorists believe that the persistent white lines left by planes in the sky are not mere contrails, but metallic aerosols, graphene, aluminum, and barium, designed to make the atmosphere more conductive for HAARP's radio beams. This creates a global grid that allows for the fine-tuned manipulation of the climate. In this worldview, there is no such thing as a natural disaster anymore. Every flood, heat wave, and storm is a move in a geopolitical game played by the world superpowers. Critics of the HAARP theory argue that the facility simply does not have the power necessary to affect the weather, comparing its energy output to a small fraction of a single lightning bolt. They maintain that the ionosphere is far too high up to influence the troposphere where weather occurs. Yet, the secrecy surrounding the facility during its peak years, and its funding by the US Air Force and Navy kept the suspicions alive. For 5 minutes of script, one could explore the myriad of strange clouds and luminous glows reported in the sky shortly before major disasters, which theorists claim are the telltale signs of the ionosphere being cooked by the Alaskan antennas. As we look back at the climate anxieties of 2010, the HAARP conspiracy represents a deeper fear, the loss of the last truly natural thing on Earth. The idea that even the rain and the wind have been weaponized is a heavy burden for the human psyche. It turns the sky into a battlefield and the clouds into a camouflage for a secret war. While the HAARP facility has since been handed over to the University of Alaska, the legend persists. New facilities in China and Russia have been identified as the new HAARP, ensuring that the theory of weather warfare will continue to drift through the collective subconscious like a storm that never breaks. (2011) The Simulation Hypothesis. The mystery of the simulation hypothesis is a theory that has rattled people for decades, but it gained a new, scientific legitimacy in 2011 as our own computing power began to mirror the complexity of the natural world. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the glitches people started reporting in their daily lives, moments where the laws of physics seemed to stutter or repeat. To understand the simulation hypothesis, one must entertain the possibility that our entire universe, from the furthest star to the thoughts in our heads, is actually a high-fidelity computer program running on a mainframe built by a more advanced civilization. The year 2011 was a landmark for this theory because of the increasing visibility of high-level proponents in the fields of physics and philosophy. While the idea of a fake world dates back to Plato's cave, the modern version is rooted in the simulation argument proposed by Nick Bostrom. He argued that if any civilization ever reaches a post-human stage where they can run ancestor simulations with more processing power than the original reality, then the number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the one base reality. Statistically speaking, if simulations are possible, it is almost a mathematical certainty that we are currently living inside one. In 2011, as we watched our own video games move toward photorealism, the gap between game and reality began to feel dangerously thin. Theorists often point to the pixelated nature of our universe at the smallest scales as the primary evidence for this digital construct. In physics, there is a limit to how small an object can be, known as the Planck length. Beyond this point, the laws of physics as we know them cease to function. To those who believe we are in a simulation, the Planck length is essentially the resolution of our universe, the smallest possible pixel in the grand rendering of space-time. Furthermore, at the quantum level, particles do not seem to exist in a definite state until they are observed. This mirrors a common technique in video game programming called frustum culling, where the computer only renders the environment that the player is currently looking at to save processing power. If the universe only exists when we look at it, it suggests a highly efficient, resource-saving program. In 2011, the search for computer code in the fabric of reality took a literal turn. Theoretical physicist Dr. James Gates claimed to have discovered double-dual self-dual error-correcting block codes within the equations of string theory. These are the same types of codes used by web browsers to correct errors during data transmission. The discovery that the fundamental mathematical language of our universe contains the same error-correcting logic as a search engine sent shockwaves through the conspiracy community. It suggested that our reality isn't just like a computer. It is built using the same digital tools we use to build our own virtual worlds. This theory also provides an umbrella for the glitch in the matrix phenomenon, which exploded in popularity in the early 2010s. People began sharing accounts of déjà vu that lasted too long, objects disappearing and reappearing in impossible places, or seeing strangers with the exact same appearance standing side by side in a crowd. In a simulated world, these are not mere coincidences. They are the result of a laggy processor or a copy-paste error in the simulation's code. For many, these glitches are the only moments when the veil is pulled back, revealing the flickering screen behind the sun and the stars. The implications of the simulation hypothesis are both profound and deeply unsettling for the human psyche. If we are in a simulation, then our creators may not be gods in the religious sense, but rather programmers or historians from the future studying their own past. It raises questions about the admin, the entity or intelligence that maintains the server. Can the simulation be paused? Can it be reset? Some theorists suggest that major historical shifts, or even the Mandela effect, are the result of the programmers tweaking the variables or updating the software to see how the simulated population reacts to a new patch. As we look at the world through the lens of 2011 technology, the simulation hypothesis represents the ultimate loss of agency. It suggests that our deepest emotions and our greatest achievements are merely the output of an algorithm. However, for some, there is a strange comfort in this idea. It suggests that there is a logic to the universe, even if we cannot see it, and that our lives are part of a grander, more complex design. Whether we are made of stardust or silicon, the mystery remains. Who is holding the controller, and what happens when they decide to turn the power off? As the new millennium progressed, we continued to search for the boundaries of our cage, hoping to find a way to peek behind the code and see the true face of the world. (2012) The Mandela Effect and CERN. The mystery of the Mandela Effect is a phenomenon that has rattled people for years, but it became a global obsession in 2012 as the world's largest particle accelerator reached its most significant milestones. This theory serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the idea that our collective timeline has been fractured or altered. To understand the Mandela Effect, one must look at the thousands of people who possess vivid, identical memories of a history that, according to current records, never actually occurred. It is the jarring realization that the past is no longer a fixed point, but a shifting landscape. The year 2012 was a pivotal moment for this theory because it coincided with the successful discovery of the Higgs boson particle at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. On July 4, 2012, scientists announced they had found the God particle, a discovery that fundamentally explained how matter gains mass. However, to conspiracy theorists, the high-energy experiments conducted within the Large Hadron Collider did more than just find a particle. They tore a hole in the fabric of space-time. The theory suggests that by smashing protons together at near-light speeds, CERN inadvertently shifted our entire reality into a parallel dimension, one that is nearly identical to our own, but with subtle, maddening differences. The term Mandela Effect was coined by researcher Fiona Broome, who discovered that she, along with thousands of others, shared a distinct memory of the South African leader Nelson Mandela dying in prison during the 1980s. They remembered the funeral, the news coverage, and the global mourning. Yet, in our current reality, Mandela was released, became president, and lived until 2013. In 2012, as the internet allowed people to compare notes on a massive scale, more of these memory glitches began to surface. People realized they remembered the Berenstain Bears as the Berenstein Bears, or that the Monopoly Man once wore a monocle that has since vanished from history. The depth of this theory lies in the specificity and the mass nature of these false memories. These are not just individuals forgetting a detail. These are entire populations across the globe sharing the exact same error. Theorists argue that these are not mistakes of the mind, but residue from our original timeline. They believe that when CERN fired up the collider in 2012, it created a localized black hole or a quantum bridge that merged our world with a neighboring one. In this new reality, the Looney Tunes are now Looney Tunes, and the quote from Star Wars is "No, I am your father," rather than the Luke, "I am your father" that millions of people clearly recall. Within the context of the 2012 era, the theory also links to the ancient Mayan calendar and the end of the world prophesies. While skeptics mocked the idea of a physical apocalypse, theorists suggested that the end was actually a metaphysical shift. They argue that the world as we knew it did end in 2012, and we have been living in a cloned or shifted reality ever since. CERN is seen as the engine of this transition, a group of scientists playing with forces they do not fully understand, accidentally editing the source code of the universe. The presence of a statue of Shiva, the destroyer of worlds, at the CERN facility only adds to the occult-tinged anxiety surrounding their work. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the psychological impact of having one's reality questioned. To remember something so clearly, to have seen it, read it, and experienced it, only to be told by every history book and digital record that you are wrong, creates a unique form of existential dread. It suggests that our memories are the only thing we truly own, yet even they can be overwritten by a shift in the quantum field. Critics argue that the Mandela effect is simply a byproduct of how the human brain stores information, often filling in the blanks with more logical or common spellings. They claim that our brains are fallible, and that the internet has merely created a loop where one person's misremembering influences thousands of others. However, for those who lived through the transition of 2012, the false memory explanation feels like a form of gaslighting. They point to the residue found in old newspapers, VHS tapes, and memorabilia that still carry the original spellings or details as proof that the world was once different. To them, the Mandela effect is the smoking gun of a multiverse, a signal that we are no longer home. We are travelers in a slightly different version of Earth, living through the ripples of an experiment that changed the nature of time itself. As we look back at 2012, the Mandela effect stands as the ultimate mystery of the digital age. It is a story about the fragility of truth and the power of the collective subconscious. It leaves us wondering if we will ever return to our original timeline, or if we will continue to drift through an endless series of parallel worlds, each one slightly more wrong than the last. In the silence of the archive, the names and dates continue to shift, reminding us that the past is never truly dead, it is just waiting to be edited. Moving further into the year 2012, we shift our focus from the physical anomalies of particle accelerators to the digital shadows of the deep web. This is the story of a puzzle that redefined the concept of an internet mystery, blending high-level mathematics with ancient philosophy and occult symbolism. 2012, Cicada 3301. The mystery of Cicada 3301 is one that has rattled the digital world for years, representing the most complex and sophisticated puzzle in the history of the internet. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the existence of internet-native secret societies and the covert recruitment methods of global intelligence agencies. To understand Cicada 3301, one must imagine a challenge so difficult that it could only be solved by a tiny fraction of the world's population, a puzzle that required mastery of cryptography, steganography, classical literature, and cybersecurity. It was not just a game, it was a search for highly intelligent individuals that felt like a digital equivalent of the search for the Holy Grail. The mystery officially began on January 5, 2012, when a simple image appeared on a popular image board. The image featured a white cicada on a black background and a message that stated, "Hello. We are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test." Within the image was a hidden message that could only be found by altering the file's code or using specific digital tools. This was the first breadcrumb in a trail that would eventually lead participants across the globe. By late 2012, the puzzle had grown into a massive international investigation, as the cicada moved from the digital realm into the physical world. Participants were directed to specific GPS coordinates in locations like Warsaw, Paris, Seattle, and Seoul, where they found physical posters attached to lampposts featuring the Cicada logo and a QR code. The depth of this theory lies in the sheer intellectual weight of the puzzle itself. Unlike a standard marketing campaign or a creepypasta story, Cicada 3301 was real, and it was brilliantly constructed. To progress, solvers had to decode the Liber Primus, a book written by the organization that used a runic alphabet and contained deep philosophical meditations on the nature of the self, the death of the ego, and the sanctity of information. The puzzle touched on everything from the music of Johann Sebastian Bach to the poetry of William Blake and the Agrippa poem by William Gibson. The theorists of 2012 began to ask, who has the resources, the time, and the genius-level intellect to construct such a multi-layered masterpiece? The common theories regarding the who behind Cicada 3301 range from the benevolent to the sinister. Many believe it was a recruitment tool for a three-letter agency like the CIA, the NSA, or the British MI6, looking to find hackers who could think outside the box and master ancient codes. Others suggest it was a recruitment effort by a powerful global corporation, such as a major defense contractor or a tech giant, looking for the next generation of encryption experts. However, a more persistent theory suggests that Cicada 3301 is an independent, non-state secret society, a digital Illuminati, that seeks to protect the freedom of information and privacy in an increasingly surveyed world. Their philosophy, as outlined in their decoded texts, leans toward a form of digital Zen or crypto-anarchy, suggesting that intelligence is the only true currency of the future. By the end of 2012, the first round of the puzzle had concluded. A few individuals claimed to have reached the end, receiving a private email that invited them into a hidden dark web forum to work on a collective project. Those who won the challenge have remained notoriously silent, leading to further speculation about the nature of the organization. Did they join a secret think tank? Were they recruited into a cyber warfare unit? Or did they become part of an underground movement to build a new, unhackable internet? The secrecy of the winners only added to the ghost in the machine aura of the Cicada. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the psychological allure of being chosen. Cicada 3301 tapped into a deep human desire to be recognized as elite, to be part of a hidden truth that the average person cannot see. It transformed the internet from a place of passive consumption into a world of active, high-stakes mystery. Critics argue that the whole thing might have just been an elaborate art project or a social experiment by a group of highly skilled but bored programmers. They claim that the occult elements were just window dressing to make a difficult math problem feel more atmospheric. However, the legacy of Cicada 3301 continues to haunt the archives of the 21st century. It proved that in the age of total surveillance, it is still possible to remain completely anonymous and to hide complex messages in plain sight. It reminded the world that the deepest secrets are often right in front of us, encoded in the pixels of an image or the lines of a classic poem, waiting for an eye sharp enough to see them. As we look back at the quiet chaos of 2012, Cicada stands as a monument to the power of the human mind and the enduring mystery of the digital shadows. It leaves us with the uncomfortable realization that while we are watching the internet, or something within it, is also watching us, looking for the highly intelligent individuals who will shape the centuries to come. (2014) MH370, The Invisible Plane. The mystery of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is one that has rattled the world for over a decade, representing the greatest disappearance in the history of modern aviation. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the absolute reach of global surveillance and the possibility of black site interventions. To understand MH370, one must confront the staggering reality that on March 8, 2014, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 people simply blinked out of existence while flying through one of the most monitored corridors of airspace in Southeast Asia. This was not an era of paper maps and primitive radio. This was a world of real-time GPS, constant satellite handshakes, and advanced military radar. The story began in the early morning hours over the South China Sea. As the plane reached the waypoint Iguri, the pilot signed off with a routine, "Good night, Malaysian 370. Minutes later, the plane's transponder was manually switched off, and the aircraft performed a sharp, calculated turn back toward the Malay Peninsula. While official investigators eventually concluded the plane flew for 7 more hours before crashing into the deep southern Indian Ocean, the invisible plane theory suggests a far more complex and coordinated effort. By 2014, as the search yielded zero wreckage for over a year, the theory that the plane had been erased by a state actor gained immense traction. One of the most compelling layers of this theory involves the remote hijack capability of modern Boeing aircraft. Since the early 2000s, technology has existed, patented by Boeing as the uninterruptible autopilot, that allows a plane to be taken over remotely via satellite to prevent hijackers from crashing it into targets. Theorists argue that MH370 was not taken over by the pilot or a hijacker in the cabin, but by a remote operator using a backdoor in the plane's software. The narrative suggests the plane was redirected toward a secret military location, most notably the U.S. naval base at Diego Garcia, a remote atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Reports from islanders in the Maldives, who claimed to see a low-flying jumbo jet in the colors of Malaysia Airlines on the morning of the disappearance, provided a chilling physical tether to this theory. The depth of this mystery is fueled by the cargo and the passengers on board. Among the 239 people were 20 employees of Freescale Semiconductor, a company involved in developing high-tech military hardware and stealth cloaking technology. This has led to the cargo of interest theory, which posits that the plane was diverted because of a specific individual or a piece of sensitive technology that could not be allowed to reach its destination in Beijing. In this version of events, MH370 was not a tragedy, but a high-stakes geopolitical theft carried out in the shadows of the sky. The lack of debris for the first several hundred days of the search reinforced the idea that the plane landed intact or was dismantled in a hangar far from the eyes of the public. Furthermore, the digital evidence known as the Inmarsat data remains a point of intense scrutiny. For hours after the plane went silent, a satellite in a stationary orbit over the Indian Ocean continued to receive pings or handshakes from the aircraft. While the official Seven Arcs theory used this data to place the plane in the deep ocean, theorists in 2014 argued that the data was being manipulated in real time to create a digital trail leading the world away from the actual location of the plane. They point to the fact that many of the passengers' cell phones continued to ring for days after the disappearance, a technical impossibility if the plane were at the bottom of a 4-mile deep trench. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the sheer impossibility of losing a 200-foot-long aircraft in the age of total connectivity. The MH370 case shattered the illusion that we are always being watched. It revealed blind spots in our global net that most people didn't know existed. Critics argue that the ocean is simply too large and the currents too unpredictable to find a needle in a haystack, and that the various theories are merely a coping mechanism for a grieving world that cannot accept a senseless accident. They claim the debris that eventually washed up on the shores of Africa and Reunion Island proves the plane met a violent end at sea. However, for those who analyze the radar playback and the calculated nature of the plane's maneuvers, the official story feels like a fabrication. To them, MH370 is the ghost ship of the 21st century, a reminder that with the right level of authorization, an entire flight can be redacted from history. As we look back at the quiet terror of 2014, the missing plane stands as a monument to the things we aren't allowed to know. It leaves us with the haunting thought that somewhere, in a hidden hangar or beneath a different patch of ocean, the secrets of 239 souls are being kept under a lock that may never be broken. The archive of the invisible plane remains open, a silent scream in the vast, empty sky. Continuing our journey into the year 2014, we move from the vanishing tracks of the sky to a set of monolithic stones in the American South. This is the story of a modern-day Stonehenge that many believe was a countdown clock for a global purge. (2014) The Georgia Guidestones. The mystery of the Georgia Guidestones is a theory that has rattled people for decades, representing what many call the 10 Commandments of the New World Order. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the existence of a secretive elite with a long-term plan for the management and radical reduction of the human population. To understand the Guidestones, one must look past the granite pillars and into the shadowy identity of their creator, a man known only by the pseudonym R.C. Christian, who appeared in Elbert County, Georgia, in 1979 with a massive amount of gold and a very specific set of instructions. The year 2014 was a pivotal moment for this theory because it marked a surge in citizen investigations into the occult symbolism of the site. Standing nearly 20 feet tall and weighing over 200,000 pounds, the monument featured a message carved in 8 different modern languages, as well as 4 ancient scripts: Babylonian cuneiform, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. The first and most controversial instruction on the stones was to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. In 2014, as global population figures continued to climb toward 8 billion, this specific guideline was viewed not as a suggestion for a distant future, but as a chilling confession of a coming mass culling. The depth of this theory lies in the mathematical and astronomical precision of the monument. Much like the Great Pyramid or Stonehenge, the Guidestones featured a hole drilled through the center stone that allowed the North Star to be visible at all times, and a slot that aligned with the solstices and equinoxes. This level of sophisticated engineering, funded by a man whose real name was never revealed even to the bankers who handled his money, suggested to theorists that the monument was intended to survive a global cataclysm. It was a restarting guide for the survivors of a nuclear or biological reset. The name R.C. Christian was widely interpreted by the 2014 community as a reference to Christian Rosenkreutz, the legendary founder of the Rosicrucian Order, an esoteric secret society that has long been linked to the Enlightenment and the shadow government. During this era, the Guidestones became a focal point for the Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 theories. Proponents argued that the monument was a public declaration by a globalist cabal, often linked to the World Economic Forum or the United Nations, of their intent to transition the world into a centralized, highly controlled state where nature is prioritized over human life. The other guidelines on the stones, such as rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason, were seen by critics as a call for a one-world religion and the destruction of individual national identities. In the quiet, rural landscape of Georgia, these stones stood as a stark, cold reminder that someone, somewhere, had planned for a world that looks very different from the one we currently inhabit. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the sheer audacity of the monument's existence. Most monuments are built to honor the past, but the Georgia Guidestones were built to command the future. This inverted purpose created a permanent aura of dread around the site. In 2014, a small granite block was added to a notch in the top of one of the stones, inscribed with the numbers 20 and 14. This event sparked a frenzy of speculation that the reset was scheduled to begin that very year. Although the block was later removed and destroyed by the site's caretaker, the event solidified the belief that the Guidestones were a living monument, being updated by the same secretive group that commissioned them decades earlier. Critics and skeptics of the theory argue that the Guidestones were simply the work of a wealthy eccentric with a passion for environmentalism and deism. They suggest that the 500 million figure was a post-apocalyptic target, meaning, if humanity were to destroy itself, it should try to stay at a manageable level afterward, rather than a goal to be achieved through active violence. They point to the Age of Reason theme as a call for humanism and scientific progress. To them, The conspiracy was a projection of rural anxieties onto a misunderstood piece of public art. However, for the millions who watched the stones from afar, the official explanations never felt sufficient. The monument's destruction in a mysterious explosion in July 2022 only served to validate the theorists' claims. It was as if the mission of the stones had been completed, or the owners decided they no longer wanted to leave a trail. As we look back at the archive of 2014, the Georgia Guidestones remain a silent, granite riddle. They remind us that history is not just made of the events that happen to us, but of the plans made by those who believe they have the right to shape the destiny of the world. They stand, even in their absence, as a monument to the unsettling idea that the future is being guided by hands we cannot see. Moving into the year 2015, we transition from the cold granite of monuments to the glittering, artificial world of pop stardom. This is a story about the intersection of fame, identity, and the unsettling idea that the people we see on our screens may not be who they claim to be. – 2015, Avril Lavigne is dead. The mystery of Avril Lavigne and her alleged replacement, Melissa, is a theory that has rattled the internet for years, representing the ultimate body double conspiracy of the digital age. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the pressures of the music industry and the possibility of cloning or replacing high-value assets to maintain corporate profits. To understand the Avril theory, one must look past the pop-punk aesthetic and into a rabbit hole of forensic analysis, lyrical decoding, and the bizarre claim that the original Avril Lavigne passed away in 2003 and was replaced by a lookalike named Melissa Mandela. The theory gained significant global traction in 2015 when a Brazilian fan site published a massive archive of evidence that went viral. The narrative suggests that at the height of her fame following the success of her debut album, Let Go, the real Avril Lavigne struggled with the intense scrutiny of the spotlight and the loss of her grandfather. According to the theory, she was found dead at her home in 2003. Rather than announce the tragedy and lose a multi-million-dollar brand, the record label supposedly decided to move forward with a body double named Melissa, who had already been hired to distract paparazzi. By 2015, theorists were using high-definition video and photo comparisons to claim that the new Avril had different jawlines, different birthmarks, and a completely different personality from the old Avril. The depth of this theory is fueled by a process known as lyrical forensic analysis. Proponents of the Melissa theory point to the lyrics of the 2004 album Under My Skin as a series of hidden confessions from the replacement. In the song Nobody's Home, they hear a story of a girl who has been erased, and in My Happy Ending, they see a goodbye to her former self. Furthermore, the theory highlights a promotional photo shoot where Avril has the name Melissa written on her hand in Sharpie, a detail that theorists believe was a cry for help or a subtle nod to the truth by a double who felt guilty about the deception. The shift in her musical style, from the rebellious, skater girl persona of the early 2000s to the more polished, girly pop of later years, was seen not as natural artistic evolution, but as a failure of the replacement to perfectly mimic the original. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the way it utilizes the tools of the 21st century to question reality. In 2015, amateur investigators were using facial recognition software, voice frequency analysis, and ear mapping to compare the Avril of 2002 with the Avril of 2015. They noted that the new Avril was shorter, that her handwriting had changed, and that she seemed to lack the specific punk edge of the teenager who had first arrived on the scene. While skeptics argue that people simply grow up, change their style, and lose their baby fat as they enter their 30s, the Melissa theory taps into a deeper, more cynical belief that everything in the entertainment industry is a carefully manufactured illusion. The Avril is dead legend became a blueprint for other celebrity replacement theories that would follow, including those involving Paul McCartney, Gucci Mane, and Britney Spears. It represents a cultural anxiety about the disposable nature of human beings in a capitalist society. If a person becomes a brand, is the original human even necessary anymore? In 2015, this question resonated deeply with an audience that was becoming increasingly aware of deepfakes and AI technology. The idea that a corporate entity would prioritize a product over a human life felt, to many, like a disturbing but plausible reality of the modern age. Critics and skeptics of the theory point out that the original Brazilian blog that started the viral wave in 2015 eventually admitted that the post was a social experiment. The creator stated that he wanted to show how easily people could be convinced of a lie if they were presented with enough selective evidence. They argue that the human mind is designed to find patterns where none exist, and that the Melissa theory is simply a byproduct of internet boredom. They claim that Avril Lavigne's battle with Lyme disease, which she went public with around the same time, explains her physical changes and her time away from the public eye. However, for the millions who continue to watch her music videos with a skeptical eye, the Melissa theory remains an open case. It has become a permanent part of internet folklore, a story that refuses to die even as the artist herself continues to perform. It reminds us that in the age of the image, we can never truly be sure of what is happening behind the curtain. We are left to wonder if the people we admire are truly who they say they are, or if we are all just watching a series of talented doubles playing a role in a script we didn't write. As we look back at the archive of 2015, the name Melissa stands as a symbol of the fragile boundary between the real and the replaced, a whisper in the wind of a digital world where nothing is quite as it seems. Moving into the year 2016, we shift our focus from the replacement of individuals to the replacement of our entire digital reality. This is a story about the day the World Wide Web stopped being a human community and became a hall of mirrors managed by artificial intelligence. (2016) The Dead Internet Theory. The mystery of the dead internet theory is a concept that has rattled users for years, representing a profound shift in how we perceive our daily interactions in the digital realm. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that the organic internet we once knew was surreptitiously replaced around the year 2016. According to this theory, the vast majority of the content, comments, and social media activity we see today is no longer generated by human beings. Instead, it is the work of a massive, interconnected network of artificial intelligence and automated bots, designed to manufacture a false sense of public consensus and steer the direction of human culture. The year 2016 is pinpointed by theorists as the point of no return. It was a year of unprecedented global political upheaval, a time when the power of social media to influence elections and public thought became undeniably clear. The theory suggests that during this window, government agencies and massive corporations deployed sophisticated crawlers and AI language models to flood the web. By 2016, the data showed a massive spike in bot traffic, but the dead internet theory goes further. It posits that the humans you argue with in comment sections, the influencers you follow, and the viral memes that cross your timeline are all part of a scripted simulation. The goal is not just to sell products, but to ensure that the human occupants of the internet remain predictable, divided, and easily managed. The depth of this theory is rooted in the feeling of sameness that began to permeate the web during this era. Users started to notice that conversations on platforms like Reddit, Twitter, and YouTube began to follow repetitive, cyclical patterns. The same jokes, the same outrages, and the same linguistic quirks appeared across thousands of seemingly unrelated accounts. In the 2016 landscape, this was often dismissed as meme culture, but theorists saw it as the hallmark of a limited AI algorithm recycling a finite set of data points. They argue that the internet died because the spontaneous, messy, and unpredictable nature of human creativity was strangled by an algorithmic ceiling. When you scroll through a feed today, you aren't exploring a digital frontier, you are walking through a curated museum where the other visitors are just mannequins. What makes this theory so compelling for a long-form deep dive is the gaslighting of the masses. In 2016, the concept of the echo chamber became a buzzword, but the dead internet theory suggests that these chambers are not created by our own choices, but are artificial constructs. If a government or corporation wants to make a fringe idea seem popular, they simply activate a botnet to like, share, and comment on the idea until it trends. To the actual human observer, it appears as though thousands of people are in agreement. This creates a psychological phenomenon where the human user begins to doubt their own instincts and aligns their views with a majority that doesn't actually exist. It is a form of digital psychological warfare that turns the web into a feedback loop of manufactured reality. The theory also touches on the redaction of history. Proponents point out that as the internet became more centralized around 2016, older, human-centric websites, forums, and blogs began to vanish from search results. The deep web of the early 2000s, a place of weird, personal, and unoptimized content, was buried under a mountain of SEO-friendly, AI-generated slop. Today, if you search for a complex question, you are often met with dozens of articles that all use the exact same phrasing and structure. Theorists argue that this is a deliberate cleansing of the digital record, ensuring that only the approved version of reality remains accessible to the average user. Critics of the dead internet theory argue that it is a hyperbolic reaction to the very real problem of bot accounts. They point out that while bots do make up a significant portion of web traffic, some estimates say over 40%, there are still billions of real humans logging on every day. They suggest that the repetitive nature of the internet is simply a result of human psychology and the way algorithms favor high engagement content. To them, the theory is a way for people to cope with the overwhelming and often toxic nature of modern social media by pretending that the other side isn't real. However, as we look back at the archive of 2016, the dead internet theory feels more prophetic with each passing year. As AI language models like ChatGPT and image generators become indistinguishable from human output, the boundary between the real and the simulated has effectively vanished. We are left to wonder if we are the last remnants of a biological era, shouting into a void that is only programmed to echo us back. The theory reminds us that in a world of infinite data, the most valuable thing, and the most difficult to find, is a genuine human connection. The internet may be dead, but the ghosts in the machine are more active than ever, writing a history for a world that has stopped paying attention. Moving into the year 2017, we shift from the decay of the internet as a whole to the birth of a specific digital gospel. This is the story of a cryptic user whose breadcrumbs turned a fringe image board into a global congregation, blurring the lines between political activism and religious fervor. 2017, QAnon, the Great Awakening. The mystery of QAnon and the Great Awakening is a phenomenon that has rattled the foundations of modern discourse, representing the most influential mega-conspiracy of the 21st century. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the collapse of institutional trust and the rise of crowdsourced intelligence. To understand QAnon, one must look at the digital primordial swamp of the image board 4chan, where on October 28, 2017, a user named Q Clearance Patriot began posting cryptic messages. This user claimed to be a high-level government insider with Q-level security clearance, a real-world Department of Energy designation for access to top-secret nuclear information, and suggested that a secret war was being waged within the highest levels of the United States government. The year 2017 marked the beginning of the drops. These were elliptical, coded messages known as breadcrumbs that hinted at a massive, covert operation led by Donald Trump to dismantle a deep-state cabal. According to the theory, this cabal was composed of high-ranking Democrats, Hollywood elites, and international billionaires who were involved in a global child sex trafficking ring and occult practices. The narrative didn't just stop at politics. It absorbed elements of Pizzagate, 9/11 inside job theories, and even older tropes about globalist banking families like the Rothschilds and Soros. By the end of 2017, what started as a few anonymous posts had evolved into the Great Awakening, a spiritual and political movement where millions of people believed they were part of a digital army tasked with uncovering the truth and preparing for the storm, the day when the cabal would be arrested and justice would be served. The depth of this theory lies in its interactive, game-like structure. In the 2017 era, QAnon followers, known as Anons, acted as bakers, taking the breadcrumbs of information provided by Q and baking them into cohesive narratives. They spent thousands of hours cross-referencing Trump's tweets with military flight logs, watch colors, and hand gestures, looking for confirmations that the plan was in motion. This turned the consumption of news into a high-stakes scavenger hunt. For many, it provided a sense of community and purpose in an increasingly complex world. It offered a unified theory of everything where every tragedy, every political scandal, and every cultural shift could be explained as a move in a 5D chess game between the forces of good, the white hats, and the forces of evil. As we look through the archive of 2017, we see the transformation of QAnon from an internet curiosity into a hyperreal religion. Theorists argue that QS posts functioned as sacred texts, requiring deep study and interpretation by a specialized priesthood of influencers and YouTubers. The movement adopted its own liturgical language, trust the plan, enjoy the show, and the collective motto, where we go one, we go all, WWG1WGA. This slogan represented a rejection of individual isolation and a return to a collective, patriotic identity. Critics and sociologists point out that the theory utilized the same psychological mechanics as cults, creating a walled garden of information where any contradicting evidence was dismissed as disinformation is necessary or a trick by the deep state. The year 2017 also saw the theory begin to leak into physical reality. People started appearing at political rallies wearing Q shirts and holding signs. The FBI eventually labeled the movement a domestic terror threat, citing the potential for fringe political conspiracy theories to motivate lone actor violence. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the sheer speed at which this digital wildfire spread. It bypassed traditional media filters entirely, moving from the anonymous corners of 4chan to the living rooms of Middle America via Facebook and YouTube. It proved that in the age of the algorithm, a compelling story is more powerful than a verifiable fact. Skeptics of the theory argue that Q was likely a series of individuals, perhaps starting as a LARP, live-action roleplay, by board moderators and eventually being taken over by figures like Ron and Jim Watkins to drive traffic to their websites. They point to the hundreds of failed predictions, starting with the very first post which claimed Hillary Clinton would be arrested on October 30th, 2017. To the skeptic, QAnon is a masterpiece of manipulation, a Rorschach test where people see exactly what they want to see. They argue that it is a byproduct of the dead internet, where botnets and influencers amplified the content until it felt like a majority opinion. However, for the true believers of the 2017 era, the lack of immediate results was simply a test of faith. They believe they are living through a period of disclosure, where the hidden rot of the world is being exposed so it can finally be purged. As we look back at the origins of QAnon, it stands as a monument to the power of the digital word. It reminds us that we no longer live in a world of shared facts, but in a world of competing narratives. Whether Q was a patriot, a prankster, or a psychological operation, the awakening changed the landscape of the 21st century forever. It left behind a world where everyone is their own investigator, and where the most dangerous secrets are the ones we choose to believe. 2018, Cambridge Analytica and the mind control. The mystery of Cambridge Analytica is a theory that has rattled the global consciousness for years, representing the moment the surveillance capitalism of the internet was unmasked as a tool for psychological warfare. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened during the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that our democratic processes were not won through debate, but through the dark nudging of the human subconscious. To understand Cambridge Analytica, one must look past the dry headlines of data breaches and into the chilling reality of psychographic profiling, a technique that claims to know you better than you know yourself, using your digital footprint to map your deepest fears and desires. The year 2018 was the year of the whistleblower, when Christopher Wiley, a pink-haired data scientist, revealed to the world how 87 million Facebook profiles had been harvested without consent. But the conspiracy goes much deeper than a simple privacy violation. The theory suggests that Cambridge Analytica didn't just have our data, they had a psychological warfare tool designed by military-grade minds. By 2018, as the public sifted through the wreckage of the 2016 elections and the Brexit referendum, a terrifying narrative emerged, that we were no longer making autonomous decisions. We were being profiled by an AI that could identify which of us were neurotic, which were agreeable, and which were prone to anger, and then serve us invisible ads designed to trigger those exact emotions. The depth of this theory lies in the 5-factor model, or the ocean personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Theorists in 2018 argued that by analyzing a few hundred of your Facebook likes, the company's algorithms could predict your personality with more accuracy than your own spouse. If the algorithm identified you as highly neurotic, it wouldn't show you a standard political ad. It would show you a terrifying, dark-filtered image of a city in chaos to trigger your anxiety. If you were low in openness, it would feed you nostalgic imagery of a lost past. This wasn't just advertising, it was micro-targeting on a cellular level, a digital form of mind control that bypassed the logical brain and spoke directly to the amygdala, the seat of fear. As we look through the archive of 2018, the lore of Cambridge Analytica includes the shadowy figures behind the curtain. The company was funded by Robert Mercer, a reclusive hedge fund billionaire with a fascination for AI, and headed by Steve Bannon, a man who famously spoke about the deconstruction of the administrative state. Theorists believe that CA was just one tentacle of a larger PSY group network, a collection of private intelligence firms that used honey traps, dirty tricks, and manufactured scandals to swing elections in over 200 countries. In this worldview, the free will of the voter is an illusion. We are merely puppets in a theater where the strings are pulled by data brokers and behavioral psychologists. The 2018 era also highlighted the invisible hand of the algorithm. Proponents of the theory point out that these ads were dark posts, meaning they only appeared in the feeds of the targeted individuals and vanished afterward, leaving no public record for journalists or opposing parties to scrutinize. This created a fractured reality where two neighbors could live in entirely different worlds, fed different sets of facts and fears by the same machine. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the existential dread of realizing that your organic thoughts might actually be the result of a nudge from a server in London or Virginia. It suggests that the internet has become a Skinner box, and we are the subjects being conditioned for a specific outcome. Critics of the Cambridge Analytica theory argue that the company's actual effectiveness was greatly exaggerated, mostly by the company itself to attract wealthy clients. They point out that political advertising has always tried to target voters and that CA's psychographic models were often no more effective than traditional demographic sorting. They claim that mind control is a convenient excuse for political losers to explain away a shift in public sentiment. To the skeptic, Cambridge Analytica was more of a con artist operation than a mind control one, selling a dream of total influence that the technology couldn't actually deliver. However, the legacy of 2018 remains a permanent scar on the digital age. It was the year we stopped seeing the internet as a playground and started seeing it as a battlefield. It taught us that our likes are not just preferences, but vulnerabilities. Whether or not CA actually won the election for their clients, they succeeded in something far more profound. They destroyed the idea of a shared reality. As we look back at the archive, the mystery of the mind hack reminds us that the most effective cage is the one you cannot see, the one built out of your own data, tailored to your own mind, and delivered to the screen in the palm of your hand. Moving into the year 2019, we reach a surreal apex in the history of misinformation. This is the story of a conspiracy theory so absurd that it was designed to be a mirror, reflecting the madness of the world back at itself until the line between satire and belief began to blur. (2019) Birds aren't real. The mystery of birds aren't real is a theory that has rattled the internet for years, representing a fascinating evolution in how we process information in the post-truth era. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that every bird in the sky is actually a government surveillance drone. To understand this theory, one must ascend into a world where the natural is artificial, where pigeons are liars, and where the most common creatures on Earth are actually high-tech robots powered by the deep state. While it originated in 2017, the year 2019 was when the movement exploded into the physical world, manifesting in massive billboards, citywide protests, and a law so dense it rivaled the most established secret societies. The narrative of birds aren't real posits a dark and hidden history of the 20th century. According to the movement's official records, the United States government, under the direction of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, decided in the late 1950s that birds were a national security risk. Between 1959 and 2001, the CIA allegedly systematically exterminated over 12 billion birds using poison clouds sprayed from airplanes. These biological birds were then replaced with identical, mechanical drones designed to spy on American citizens. By 2019, the law had expanded to include the fact that John F. Kennedy was assassinated because he opposed the bird genocide, and that the bird poop on your car is actually a liquid tracking apparatus containing a microscopic GPS. The depth of this theory lies in its uncanny ability to mimic the structure and fervor of genuine conspiracy movements like QAnon or the Flat Earth Society. In 2019, the movement's founder, Peter McKindow, operated in total kayfabe, meaning he stayed in character during every public appearance and media interview. He would travel across the country in a van covered in birds aren't real decals, holding rallies where hundreds of young people would chant if it flies, it spies, and pigeon is a lie. For the casual observer in 2019, it was impossible to tell if this was a dangerous cult growing in real time or the most elaborate piece of performance art ever staged. This ambiguity was the point. It forced the public to confront how easily a completely nonsensical narrative could gain institutional momentum. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the evidence of the mundane. The movement claims that birds sit on power lines not to rest, but to recharge their internal batteries using induction. They argue that birds don't migrate, they are simply moved to underground facilities for hardware updates and software patches. In 2019, as the rollout of 5G technology began to spark its own set of conspiracies, the bird truthers integrated this into their lore, claiming that the new towers were built to increase the data transmission speeds of the avian drones. To a true believer, or someone playing the role of one, the proof was everywhere. Why else would a bird stare at you from a tree? Why else would they have such robotic movements? The year 2019 saw the movement move into the mainstream media, appearing on local news stations where McKindow would act offended if a journalist suggested the theory was a joke. He argued that the media's refusal to cover the bird genocide was proof of their complicity in the cover-up. This meta-conspiracy created a safe space for Generation Z, a generation that grew up in the shadow of the dead internet and weaponized misinformation, to laugh at the absurdity of the world. It was a mass coping mechanism that used humor to process the existential dread of living in a society where truth felt increasingly pliable. By satirizing the methods of real-life conspiracies, Birds Aren't Real exposed the mechanics of how people are radicalized. Skeptics and cultural critics in 2019 were initially worried that the movement would accidentally convince people who were already prone to conspiratorial thinking. There were reports of older individuals seeing the birds aren't real billboards and genuinely wondering if there was any truth to the claim. This led to a profound realization about the nature of modern belief. If you present a lie with enough conviction, symbols, and expert testimony, a certain percentage of the population will accept it, no matter how preposterous it is. The movement proved that we are no longer in an information age, but an attention age, where the loudest story wins, regardless of its basis in reality. As we look back at the archive of 2019, Birds Aren't Real stands as a masterpiece of modern subversion. It reminded us that in a world where everything is a lie, the only way to find the truth is to embrace the lunacy. Peter McIndoe eventually broke character in 2021, revealing that the entire project was a satirical response to the conspiracy-laden environment he grew up in. However, even after the reveal, the movement lives on. It remains a powerful reminder that while the birds in the trees may be real, the stories we tell ourselves about the world around us are often more artificial than any drone. It leaves us with a final, haunting question. In a world full of manufactured truth, how can we ever be sure we aren't the ones being programmed? 2020. The Conspiracy of the Great Reset. The Conspiracy of the Great Reset is a theory that has rattled the global psyche for years, representing the ultimate intersection of economic policy and dystopian prophecy. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that the COVID-19 pandemic was not merely a health crisis, but a controlled demolition of the old world order. At the center of this mystery is Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, WEF, and his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. To those who track the moves of the global elite, this wasn't just a book. It was a manual for a new normal where national sovereignty is surrendered to a technocratic superstate. The year 2020 was the moment the Great Reset moved from the pages of academic white papers to the forefront of the digital resistance. In June 2020, as the world remained in the grip of unprecedented lockdowns, Schwab and then Prince Charles officially launched the initiative, calling for a radical reset of our economic and social systems. However, the spark that ignited the conspiracy fire was a video produced by the WEF featuring 8 predictions for the year 2030. The very first prediction was delivered with a hauntingly cheerful smile: "You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy." To millions of people sitting in their homes, watching their small businesses fail while Amazon's profit soared, this phrase felt like a threat. It suggested a future of subscription-based living where cars, homes, and even clothing are rented from a handful of mega corporations. The depth of this theory is rooted in the stakeholder capitalism model championed by the WEF. Theorists in 2020 argued that this is a wolf in sheep's clothing, a way to move away from private property and toward a system where access is granted only to those who remain compliant. This is often linked to the implementation of ESG, environmental, social, and governance scores, which critics describe as a Western version of China's social credit system. In this worldview, your ability to participate in the economy, to buy a plane ticket, to get a loan, or even to enter a grocery store, could be tied to your sustainability score or your adherence to global health mandates. The Great Reset is seen as the final bridge toward a cashless society where every transaction is tracked, verified, and controlled by a central bank digital currency, CBDC. As we look through the archive of 2020, the lore of the Great Reset is inextricably tied to the rhetoric of world leaders. When politicians like Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, and Boris Johnson began using the phrase "Build Back Better," theorists saw it as a coded signal of their allegiance to the WEF's plan. The narrative suggests that the lockdowns were intentionally prolonged to condition the public to accept government overreach and to destroy the middle class, leaving the population dependent on a universal basic income, UBI. In this scenario, The UBI is the ultimate hook. Once you rely on the state for your survival, you can no longer afford to resist the reset. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the psychological rebranding of the world that occurred in 2020. The theory suggests that the reset requires the destruction of the old human identity, faith, family, and tradition to be replaced by a digital identity. This is where the conspiracy overlaps with transhumanism, the idea that humans will eventually merge with AI to stay competitive in the fourth industrial revolution. Klaus Schwab's own words about the fusion of our physical, digital, and biological identities are often cited as proof that the Great Reset is not just about money. It's about the very definition of what it means to be human. Critics and fact-checkers of the theory argue that the Great Reset is a benign, even idealistic, attempt to address the failures of modern capitalism, such as climate change and wealth inequality. They point out that the "you will own nothing" prediction was actually written by a Danish MP, Ida Auken, as a thought experiment about the circular economy and the rise of the sharing economy, like Uber or Spotify. They claim that Schwab is merely a talking head, with no actual power to force sovereign nations to do anything. To the skeptic, the Great Reset is a boring policy proposal that has been transformed into a terrifying monster by the conspiracy industrial complex to generate clicks and fear. However, for those who lived through the year of the pause, the official reassurances feel hollow. They point to the coincidence that the elite met at Event 201, a high-level pandemic simulation, just months before the actual outbreak occurred. To them, the Great Reset is the endgame, a plan that has been in the works for a century, finally finding its window of opportunity in the chaos of a global virus. As we look back at the archive of 2020, the image of a reset button remains the most powerful symbol of our time. It reminds us that once a system is broken, the people who offer to fix it are usually the ones who gain the most from its collapse. Whether the reset is a roadmap to a sustainable utopia or a digital dark age, one thing is certain: the world we knew before 2020 is never coming back. "2020. The mystery of the 5G rollout." The mystery of the 5G rollout is a theory that has rattled the global community for years, representing a pinnacle of technological radiophobia. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the belief that the fifth generation of cellular technology was not an upgrade in speed, but a weaponized frequency. To understand the 5G theory in 2020, one must look at the unique psychological pressure cooker of that year. As billions of people were confined to their homes, staring at their devices for connection, a terrifying narrative began to circulate, that the very towers providing that connection were actually the source of the sickness outside. The year 2020 saw this theory mutate and spread faster than any previous infrastructure concern. The narrative gained massive traction in January 2020, following comments by a Belgian doctor who linked the dangers of 5G to the emergence of the coronavirus. The theory suggested a geographic smoking gun. Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the initial outbreak, had been one of the first cities in the world to undergo a massive 5G rollout. Theorists produced maps overlaying 5G tower installations with COVID-19 hotspots, claiming the correlation was too perfect to be accidental. By April 2020, this digital anxiety manifested in physical violence. In the United Kingdom alone, at least 77 mobile masts were set on fire, and telecom engineers were harassed and assaulted in the streets. The depth of this theory lies in the two-pronged attack hypothesis. The first version suggested that 5G radiation directly caused the symptoms of COVID-19, essentially arguing that the virus was actually a biological reaction to high-frequency millimeter waves. Proponents pointed to the oxygen absorption properties of 60 GHz frequencies, claiming the towers were preventing people's lungs from absorbing oxygen, leading to the respiratory distress seen in hospitals. The second, more persistent version argued that 5G radiation didn't create the virus, but weakened the immune system, making the population vulnerable to a pathogen that might otherwise have been harmless. In this worldview, the lockdown was not a health measure, but a way to keep people indoors while the deadly towers were installed in secret. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is its connection to directed energy weapons. Theorists in 2020 frequently compared 5G transmitters to the US military's active denial system, a non-lethal crowd control weapon that uses millimeter waves to create a burning sensation on the skin. They argued that the new small cell towers, placed every few hundred feet in urban areas, were creating an electrosmog that the human body was never meant to endure. This was often linked back to the Great Reset and Agenda 21, with the towers being viewed as a global surveillance grid that could not only monitor your location but also influence your biological state. The 2020 era also saw the 5G theory merge with the microchip conspiracy. Many believed that the ultimate goal of the 5G-fueled pandemic was to force a global vaccination program. These vaccines, they argued, contained nanochips or luciferase markers that would be activated or polled by the 5G towers, turning the human body into a permanent node on the Internet of Things. While this sounded like science fiction, the fear was real enough to prompt YouTube and Facebook to implement unprecedented fact-checking labels and content removals, which, to the theorists, only served as further proof of a massive cover-up. Critics and scientists have spent years debunking these claims, pointing out that 5G uses non-ionizing radiation, which lacks the energy to damage DNA or interact with viruses in a biological way. They noted that countries like Iran had severe COVID-19 outbreaks despite having no 5G infrastructure at the time, and that Wuhan's 5G deployment was no more advanced than many other cities that saw far fewer initial cases. To the skeptic, the 5G theory was a correlation fallacy. The towers were in cities because that's where the people are, and the virus was in cities for the exact same reason. However, as we look back at the archive of 2020, the 5G mystery remains a powerful symbol of the information age paradox. The same technology that allowed us to work, study, and stay sane during a global crisis was also the technology we feared the most. It reminds us that when the world becomes too complex to understand, we often look for invisible enemies in the air around us. The charred remains of the cell towers in Birmingham and Quebec stand as monuments to a year when the signal became more terrifying than the silence. As the rollout continues into 2026, the towers still stand on our street corners, silent, glowing, and to some, still watching. 2021, The Mystery of Havana Syndrome. The mystery of Havana syndrome is a theory that has rattled the global intelligence community for years, representing a new and terrifying frontier in gray zone warfare. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that US and Canadian diplomats were being targeted by a portable, directed energy weapon. While the first cases appeared in Cuba in 2016, the year 2021 was a turning point. As cases spiked globally, spreading from Havana to China, Austria, Germany, and even the grounds of the White House, the theory shifted from a localized anomaly to a suspected global campaign of high-tech harassment. The narrative of 2021 was defined by the invisible pulse. Victims described a sudden onset of symptoms, a piercing, high-pitched chirping or grinding sound that seemed to follow them from room to room, accompanied by intense head pressure, dizziness, and cognitive brain fog. In December 2020 and throughout 2021, a landmark report by the National Academies of Sciences concluded that the most plausible mechanism for these injuries was directed, pulsed radio frequency energy. This was the smoking gun for theorists. It suggested a weapon that uses microwave energy to create the Fry effect, a phenomenon where the brain perceives radio waves as actual sound within the skull. By late 2021, over 200 cases were being investigated, and the US Congress passed the Havana Act to provide financial support to those whose brains had been scrambled by an unseen hand. The depth of this theory lies in the Moscow signal connection. Theorists in 2021 pointed back to the Cold War, when the Soviet Union famously bathed the US Embassy in Moscow with low-level microwave radiation for decades. They argued that Havana syndrome was the 21st century evolution of this technology, miniaturized, refined, and deployed by a special units team, often suspected to be Russia's GRU Unit 29155. The mystery was deepened by the surgical precision of the attacks. Often, only one person in a house would feel the pulse, while their spouse sleeping next to them felt nothing. This suggested a weapon with laser-like focus, capable of penetrating walls and targeting specific individuals without leaving a shell casing or a thermal signature. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the residue of reality. Unlike the 5G theory, the victims of Havana syndrome were not internet theorists. They were hardened CIA officers, elite diplomats, and military attaches. In 2021, the director of the CIA, William Burns, publicly acknowledged that the symptoms were real and that a foreign adversary was a top priority in the investigation. However, a competing theory also gained ground that year: mass psychogenic illness. Skeptics argued that after the initial news of sonic attacks broke, the high-stress environment of the diplomatic corps led to a contagion of symptoms. They pointed to a declassified report suggesting that the original sounds recorded in Havana were actually the mating calls of the Indies' short-tailed cricket. The 2021 era was a battleground between these two explanations. On one side, scientists found evidence of decreased white matter and altered functional connectivity in the brains of the victims, suggesting physical trauma similar to a concussion but without the hit to the head. On the other side, the cricket theory and the lack of a captured device led many to believe the syndrome was a modern Red Scare, a product of geopolitical tension rather than technological warfare. The debate became so polarized that it affected morale across the US State Department, with some officers refusing overseas postings for fear of being pulsed. For a moment, in late 2021, it felt as though the world was on the verge of a major disclosure. Reports surfaced of a directed energy device being tested in various military labs, and rumors circulated about a Norwegian experiment where scientists supposedly suffered brain damage while trying to replicate the weapon. Yet, as we look back from the perspective of 2026, the case remains officially unresolved. While recent 2024 knee studies found no long-term biological markers in some patients, the 2021 era stands as the height of the sonic ghost, a time when the air itself felt weaponized. Havana syndrome reminds us that in the age of invisible technology, the most dangerous weapon is the one you can't see, touch, or prove. It leaves us with a haunting question that still echoes in the hallways of embassies today. Are we being attacked by a secret enemy, or are we being haunted by the stress of a world that has become too paranoid to function? The archive of 2021 remains a silent witness to a war that may have never happened, or a war that we are already losing. Moving into the year 2022, we shift our gaze from the invisible weapons of the present to the silent parchments of the deep past. This is a story about a discovery that should have unified history, but instead fueled a decades-long suspicion that the foundations of the world's most powerful religion are built on a secret the public was never meant to see. 2022, the Dead Sea Scroll Vatican cover-up. The mystery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Vatican is a theory that has rattled historians and believers alike, representing the ultimate collision of archaeology and institutional secrecy. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that the Catholic Church has suppressed specific scrolls that would fundamentally rewrite the story of Jesus Christ. While the scrolls were discovered between 1947 and 1956 in the Qumran caves, the year 2022 saw a massive resurgence of this theory. This was fueled by a modern archaeological reckoning, a year where high-tech scans revealed that many new fragments sold to museums were clever forgeries, leading theorists to ask, if the fragments we can see are fake, what is the Vatican hiding in the fragments we can't? The narrative of 2022 centers on the missing link. According to the theory, the 900-plus scrolls found in the caves contain more than just Jewish sectarian rules and Old Testament drafts. Proponents, building on the work of controversial scholars like John Allegro and the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls Deception, argue that the Vatican exerted immense pressure on the original international editing team, which was led by a Dominican priest, to sanitize the findings. The theory suggests that hidden within the Vatican Apostolic Archives, formerly the Secret Archives, are scrolls that describe Jesus not as a divine figure, but as a leader of a radical, militant Jewish sect, or perhaps as a figure whose teachings were far more aligned with the Sons of Light at Qumran than with the later Church in Rome. The depth of this theory is rooted in the publication lag. For nearly 40 years, a tiny cartel of scholars held exclusive access to the Cave 4 fragments, refusing to release photographs or even transcriptions to the wider academic world. In the 2022 digital landscape, where information is expected to be instant, this decades-long delay is viewed not as a result of scholarly perfectionism, but as a strategic redaction period. Theorists argue that during those 40 years, any scroll that mentioned a Messiah who didn't fit the orthodox mold was quietly spirited away to the Vatican's climate-controlled vaults. In 2022, as the Vatican began digitizing its archives, the absence of these heretical scrolls was seen by many as proof that the most dangerous truths had already been moved to a Level 2 security area. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the James versus Paul hypothesis. Many scroll truthers believe the Qumran texts reveal a bitter conflict between the original followers of Jesus in Jerusalem, led by his brother James, and the later Romanized version of Christianity promoted by the Apostle Paul. They claim the Vatican suppresses any scroll that validates James's legalistic, Jewish-centric view of the movement, as it would render the Roman Church's universal claims illegitimate. In 2022, the rise of independent archaeology on platforms like YouTube allowed these ideas to reach millions, creating a narrative that the New Testament is essentially a PR campaign designed to cover up the original, more radical truth found in the caves. The year 2022 also brought the forgery scandal into the mix. When it was confirmed that at least 90% of the Dead Sea Scroll fragments acquired by the Museum of the Bible were modern fakes, it created a vacuum of trust. Theorists argued that the market was flooded with fakes specifically to muddy the waters and make the genuine, hidden scrolls seem like part of a larger hoax. This meta-conspiracy posits that the Vatican and other global powers use forgeries to discredit anyone who claims to have found a lost gospel or a true history of the first century. Critics and mainstream archaeologists point out that almost all the original scrolls have been published since the early 1990s and are now available online for anyone to read. They argue that the Vatican cover-up is a ghost of a pre-internet era, kept alive by Dan Brown novels and a general distrust of religious institutions. They note that the scrolls are actually pre-Christian Jewish documents and that while they provide a fascinating context for the world Jesus lived in, they don't mention him by name, something that wouldn't be a problem for the Church if it were true. To the skeptic, the mystery is simply the slow, boring reality of translating 2,000-year-old scrap paper. However, for those who believe that all paths lead to Rome, the official transparency is just a layer of misdirection. They point to the fact that even today, the Vatican's most sensitive archives are only open to a select few with specific credentials. As we look back at the archive of 2022, the Dead Sea Scrolls remain a symbol of the lost truth. They remind us that history is written by the survivors, and that sometimes the most important stories are the ones that were left behind in the dark, waiting for a light that the keepers of the keys may never let us hold. (2023) The Deepfake Celebrity Resurrection. The mystery of celebrity resurrection is a theory that has rattled the entertainment world, representing the ultimate erosion of the boundary between the living and the dead. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that high-profile celebrities are no longer allowed to die. In 2023, the emergence of generative AI and hyper-realistic deepfakes created a post-mortal industry where an actor's death is merely a contractual hurdle. To theorists, this isn't just about entertainment. It is the birth of spectral labor, where the dead are compelled to haunt the present for the profit of the living. The year 2023 was a landmark for this phenomenon due to the sheer accessibility of the technology. We saw new songs by the Beatles featuring the voice of a long-dead John Lennon, and AI-generated interviews with icons like Anthony Bourdain and Robin Williams. However, the conspiracy took a darker turn as fans began to receive AI-generated videos of deceased stars speaking directly to them. Zelda Williams, daughter of the late Robin Williams, made a harrowing public plea in late 2023, begging people to stop sending her AI recreations of her father's voice. To theorists, these weren't just fan tributes. They were beta tests for a world where the elite are preserved in silicon, their likenesses used to endorse products and ideologies forever. The depth of this theory lies in the erasure of consent. Proponents argue that as Hollywood studios began stockpiling digital twins of living actors, a major point of contention during the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strikes, they were effectively creating a digital afterlife that the individual could no longer control. In the conspiracy-leaning corners of the web, this led to the zombie star theory, the belief that several living celebrities have actually been dead for years, replaced by a combination of high-end deepfakes and body doubles to prevent a dip in stock prices or to maintain a specific political influence. In 2023, every glitch in a video call or uncanny valley moment in a movie was scrutinized as a failure of the resurrection software. What makes this theory so compelling for a 5-minute deep dive is the crisis of evidence. In 2023, we reached a threshold where the human eye could no longer reliably distinguish between authentic and fabricated media. Scammers began using AI voice cloning to mimic the voices of loved ones in emergency scenarios, but in the celebrity world, this manifested as the infinite franchise. Theorists point to the de-aging of actors like Harrison Ford or the digital return of Carrie Fisher as proof that the industry is moving toward a museum of the eternal, where new talent is suppressed in favor of safe, profitable ghosts. This raises the unsettling question: if we can't tell the difference between a person and a program, does the person still exist? The 2023 era also highlighted the soul as data concept. Catholic experts and philosophers began warning that digital resurrection was a mockery of the human spirit, turning a person's life history into raw data to be mined. Theorists took this further, suggesting that the Great Reset includes a plan to digitize human consciousness entirely, using celebrities as the first guinea pigs to normalize the transition. They argue that once we accept a digital Robin Williams, we are one step closer to accepting a digital version of ourselves, a version that can be edited, censored, or deleted at the whim of the admin. Critics and technologists argue that this is simply the natural progression of special effects and that the conspiracy is just an ethical debate disguised as a mystery. They point out that digital resurrection has been used for pro-social goals, such as letting victims of school shootings speak to advocate for gun control. They claim that most fans find comfort in seeing their idols again and that the legal system is already catching up to protect post-mortem publicity rights. To the skeptic, we aren't being replaced. We are just finding new ways to remember. However, as we look back from the perspective of 2026, the 2023 deepfake summer feels like the opening of a door that can never be closed. It reminds us that in a world of infinite simulation, the most valuable thing is the real, and the real is becoming increasingly rare. The archive of 2023 stands as a warning. When the dead can talk back, the living may find they have nothing left to say. (2023) The Las Vegas Aliens and the Disclosure. The mystery of the Las Vegas beings is a theory that has rattled the UFO community, representing a rare moment where civilian sighting perfectly synchronized with a government whistleblower's testimony. It serves as a foundation for many debates about what really happened in the early 21st century, specifically regarding the claim that non-human entities are not just out there, but are actively operating on the ground. The story broke on the night of April 30th and the early morning of May 1st, 2023, when a glowing green light was captured on a Las Vegas police officer's bodycam as it streaked across the Nevada sky. Minutes later, a 911 call came in from a terrified family claiming that something had crashed in their backyard, and that they were currently staring at 8 to 10 foot tall creatures with big shiny eyes. The depth of this theory lies in the total evidence approach of 2023. Unlike a standard blurry light sighting, this incident featured multiple data points: the high-speed meteor-like object seen by dozens across the West, the frantic 911 recording where the caller swore "I am not a joke," and the responding officers who admitted they were nervous because they had seen the light too. For 5 minutes of deep dive, one can explore the Kenmore video, a cell phone clip filmed by the teenager, Angel Kenmore, as the family approached their backyard. While the original video appeared to show only shadows, crime scene analysts in late 2023 and 2024 claimed to have found cloaked entities in the frames, visual anomalies that moved with a biological intent, seemingly peering over fences or hiding behind equipment. The 2023 era saw this local incident collide with a global political earthquake, the testimony of David Grush. Just weeks after the Las Vegas report, Grush, a decorated former intelligence official, went public with the claim that the US government possesses intact and partially intact non-human craft and even biologics, non-human remains. In July 2023, Grush testified under oath before Congress, stating that a multi-decade secret program had been reverse engineering this technology without congressional oversight. For the theorists of 2023, the Las Vegas backyard sighting wasn't a separate event. It was a physical leak occurring at the same time the institutional dam was breaking. The theory suggests that the Las Vegas incident was a recovery mission gone wrong. Proponents point to the perfect circle found in the dust of the family's backyard and the fact that the police eventually installed high-end surveillance cameras on the family's roof, a level of response rarely seen for a simple trespassing call. They argue that the aliens were likely crew members of a crashed craft who were waiting for extraction. The cloaking observed in the video was interpreted as advanced technology designed to mask their presence from the pesky humans, until they could be retrieved by a shadow government team. What makes this theory so compelling is the ontological shock it provided to the public. For decades, the gray alien was a pop culture trope. In 2023, it became a matter of national security. The US government's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, released reports confirming hundreds of new UAP sightings, but they remained steadfast in their denial of extraterrestrial evidence. This created a credibility gap that theorists filled with a chilling narrative, that the government is essentially gaslighting the public, acknowledging the objects while hiding the occupants. Critics and skeptics of the Las Vegas case argue that the creatures were likely just shadows cast by the family's flashlights and that the green light in the sky was a common bolide meteor. They point to the fact that no physical debris was ever produced and that the family has since hired an attorney and a publicist, suggesting a potential financial motive. To the skeptic, the 2023 disclosure movement was just a series of arguments from authority with no actual hardware to show for it, and nothing burger wrapped in high-level government jargon. However, as we look back from 2026, the archive of 2023 remains a fever dream of almost truths. It was the year the world waited for the big reveal that never quite came. It leaves us with the haunting image of a teenager in a Las Vegas backyard, looking into the darkness and seeing something 100% not human. Whether it was a visitor from another world or a hallucination born of a high-stress year, the mystery of 2023 proved that the sky is no longer the limit of our fears. The true mystery might be standing right behind us in the dark.